Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a really exciting and, well, forward-thinking shift in how we learn. AI-era nomadic learning.
Yeah, it's a powerful idea. And honestly, it's becoming pretty essential, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. Especially with knowledge just exploding everywhere.
Right. This incredible surge in information, a lot of it, driven by AI.
And the old ways, the traditional learning models,
Yeah,
they're struggling to keep up.
totally. It's like trying to navigate this huge, constantly growing city, the map from 5 years ago.
That's a great analogy. And that's kind of the challenge we face, right? With traditional learning in this data-heavy age.
And you see the effects, like the skills gap widening in so many industries.
Exactly. Traditional learning often feels so constrained.
Yeah, by classroom walls, rigid schedules.
Set subjects, textbooks that might be, well, out of date almost before they're printed. We've all been there.
For sure. Think about the contrast. On one hand, you've got that fixed classroom, students may be passively receiving info.
And on the other, a really dynamic environment. You can access knowledge on like countless devices, whenever, wherever.
And that contrast really highlights the limitations we're trying to move past.
So nomadic learning offers an alternative.
A really compelling one, I think. It's flexible, autonomous, and basically limitless.
Limitless, wow. So learners can just move freely.
Exactly, through this massive ocean of knowledge, guided by their own curiosity, their own needs, like explorers charting their own course.
Picture someone just untethered, accessing all sorts of knowledge streams from anywhere.
Precisely.
So the main idea is that you, the learner, you're in the driver's seat.
Yep. You independently choose what grabs your interest, how you want to dig into it, driven by your questions, your goals.
And the advantages seem pretty clear.
Oh, they're substantial. We're breaking down those old barriers, time, physical location.
And gaining access to, what, a global library?
Pretty much. Online courses from top universities, cutting-edge papers, talks by world experts. It's all out there.
Plus, you learn at your own speed.
Right. Fitting it into your life, your style. Imagine using AI to explore, I don't know, completely different fields.
Like a virtual physics experiment 1 minute.
And then maybe diving into a historical simulation the next. It's that kind of flexibility.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Beyond just the how-to.
You mean the theory behind it?
Exactly. We're also going to explore some of the underlying ideas that help us make sense of this. We'll look at Deleuze and Guattari.
Ah, the rhizome concept.
Yes, and also the educational philosophy of Paulo Freire. Super important.
So the mission for this deep dive, really, is to get a solid grasp on this evolving landscape.
And figure out what it means for actually learning effectively in this age of, well, pretty sophisticated AI.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's dive into how nomadic learning actually plays out in the real world.
Right, because it's not just students who feel the constraints of the old system.
No, teachers too.
Yeah.
I actually remember this one time I was teaching an English conversation class, and I brought in this really lovely illustrated kids picture book. Wanted to read it aloud, make it more like, a story time, like you might get in an American library. More engaging.
Makes sense. How did that go down?
Yeah. Someone from the admin side, not a teacher, definitely no background in education, actually came in, interrupted the class.
Seriously? To say what?
To ask why I wasn't using PowerPoint.
You're kidding.
Nope. Here I am, using this physical book, beautiful illustrations, bringing it alive. And they're asking if we weren't, required to use PPT for every single class.
Wow, that's rigid. The assumption that one tool fits all.
Exactly. It just seems so bizarre. Why assume PPT is always needed?
It really shows that inflexibility. And that same kind of rigidity applies to traditional textbooks too, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Think about the lag time.
Huge between writing, publishing, and getting it to students.
Right. So a textbook published in, say, 2024, used in 2025.
The info inside might be from 2021 or even earlier.
Yeah, potentially 3-year-old information by the time you're reading it. That's significant.
Whereas electronic textbooks, well, they're different.
So
You log in, boom, instant access. But more importantly,
updates.
exactly, if there's an error or a new research comes out, the author can update the digital file.
And everyone gets the update immediately.
Pretty much. It's this continuous refinement. You're working with much more current information.
That perfectly captures the flexibility we're talking about. And you see this in the working world too, right?
For sure. Remote work has changed things dramatically.
I remember being in Europe in 2023, actually. I wanted to meet the guy who created the VOS viewer software I use. He's based in the Netherlands.
Oh, yeah. Did you manage to?
Well, One of his research students told me he basically never comes to the office.
Does everything remotely.
Yeah. Said he can do it all effectively from home.
That's becoming so much more common.
Totally. And then, same trip, at a market in the Netherlands, I met this Taiwanese couple, lived there for over 20 years.
Okay.
And they mentioned their son, a lawyer, and son-in-law, works in some industry, both primarily working remotely since COVID.
As long as the work gets done.
Exactly. No strict need to be physically in the office.
And this remote capability, it just crosses borders now.
Absolutely. Like, you hear about really skilled programmers in India.
Taking projects from all over the world.
Yeah. And they can even use the time difference to their advantage. Work on stuff from Europe or the US during their day.
And deliver it back before the client's next business day starts.
It really shows the person doing the work doesn't even need to be in the same country.
And all this shifts the focus, doesn't it? Away from just like memorizing facts.
Towards actually solving problems.
Right. Nomadic learning inherently pushes you to develop those problem-solving muscles.
Definitely. It reminds me of talks I had with former students who went to the UK for masters or PhDs.
Oh, yeah. What did they say?
They often talked about the huge emphasis on independent learning there. Resourcefulness.
Which can be different from, say, the U.S. system sometimes.
Yeah, which might have more structured coursework, clearer credits assigned, that kind of thing.
In the UK model, it's often about modules, right? You talk to your advisor about your direction, then the whole university library is basically your oyster. You figure out what you need.
The onus is on you to produce the research.
Exactly. It forces you to learn beyond the classroom walls.
Yeah.
Real investigation, deep research.
It's like that old saying, right? Give a fish, feed for a day, teach to fish.
Feed for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah, nomadic learning is about learning how to learn.
Speaking of different ways to approach problems, it makes me think of the game Go, or Waiki.
Ah, complex game.
Incredibly deep. And sometimes, when you're stuck facing a really tough spot on the board,
What do you do?
the best thing is often to just step away, take a break, think about something else entirely.
And come back with fresh eyes.
Exactly. That shift in perspective can be absolutely crucial for finding that winning move.
That's a brilliant analogy. The value of getting distance, then re-engaging from a new angle, nomadic principles definitely support that.
And it's not just young students embracing this lifelong learning thing either.
No, definitely not. You see more and more older adults jumping in.
People who have the resources, maybe, and that real internal drive to learn something new.
Like learning English just for travel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They've got the time, maybe the money, and a clear personal goal.
It really blows up that old idea that teaching and learning belong to specific age groups or subjects.
Right. Learning isn't just one stage of life, it's ongoing.
And people have such diverse interests.
Totally. It's inspiring. I remember hearing about a doctor worked in a hospital
Yeah.
who was also this incredibly talented painter.
Wow. See, people are multifaceted. And learning across different fields.
It can actually boost your cognitive flexibility, your creativity.
Yes. So ultimately, the goal in this nomadic model isn't just memorizing facts you might forget anyway.
No, it's about getting the methodology of learning.
Developing that meta skill,
Yeah.
right? So you can adapt to new information, new challenges your whole life.
Exactly that.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and look at the theory side. This idea of the rhizome. Right. From Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari, really influential postmodern philosophers.
Their book, 1,000 Plateaus from 1980, that's where it's laid out.
That's the key text, yeah. And the rhizome is just one of the really compelling ideas in there.
So give us a bit of background on them. Deleuze.
Deleuze, born in Paris, 1925. He was quite a traditional academic philosopher initially.
But his ideas spread far beyond philosophy, right? Literature, art.
Oh, yeah. Huge impact. He even called himself a pure metaphysician.
And Guattari. Different background.
Somewhat, yeah. Born 1930. He collaborated a lot with Deleuze, obviously, but he was also a practicing psychoanalyst.
Or hands-on.
Seemed that way. Worked directly with patients in mental hospitals daily. Some stories suggest Deleuze actually found it difficult being around people with mental illness.
That's fascinating. They seem like such different personalities. Deleuze the scholar, Guattari the activist.
Yet they had this incredibly deep intellectual partnership.
Even later in life.
Yeah, even when Deleuze became more famous and Guattari faced some personal struggles, they stayed close. There's a nice story about Deleuze going to be with Guattari the night of a big European soccer final.
Wow. So their collaboration produced some really unique thinking, like the rhizome.
Exactly. And a core idea for Deleuze is that one equals many.
What does that mean exactly? Not one dividing into parts.
No, it's more like a constant flow of difference, a multiplicity within the one.
Okay. So how does this rhizome concept contrast with, say, more standard ways we think about knowledge?
Well, the easiest way to grasp it is to contrast it with a tree.
A tree.
Yeah. A tree has a root, a central trunk, or branches spreading out, usually upwards, linearly, hierarchically.
Okay, I can picture that. How does that relate to education?
In traditional education, you can see the teacher as the root or trunk, and information flows one way out to the students, the branches.
Focus on reproducing knowledge. Learners are passive.
Often, yeah. The emphasis is on receiving what's passed down.
All right, so the rhizome is not a tree.
Definitely not. Think more like ginger or bamboo. Those underground stems spreading out shoots in all directions.
Ah, okay, so it's a network.
A multi-to-many network. Every point, every learner can initiate knowledge, spread it.
So the focus shifts.
Completely, from just
Yeah.
reproducing knowledge to actively creating and generating it. Interaction, collaboration, diversity, innovation, those are the keywords. No single starting point, no set path.
Makes sense. So what are the defining features of a rhizome?
Deleuze and Guattari talk about several, but maybe we can focus on three key ones for this discussion.
Sounds good. What are they?
Connectability, heterogeneity, and multiplicity.
Okay, connectability first.
Right. The rhizome is this multi-to-many network. Every point can link up with loads of other points.
Which sounds a lot like the internet age, knowledge online.
Exactly. It mirrors how we navigate information now, jumping between topics across domains. In learning, it means you can connect with diverse peers, tons of resources, building networks beyond just one classroom.
Okay, and heterogeneity.
That's about the inherent difference, the diversity within the rhizome. Knowledge isn't all the same, right?
No, definitely not.
So heterogeneity encourages accepting diverse views, different kinds of knowledge,
Yeah.
which you need for innovation.
And they also talk about the body without organs. What's that?
Okay, deep breath. Think of it less as a literal body, more as pure potential, a space where different ideas, bits of knowledge can connect and transform in unexpected ways outside of rigid structures.
Interesting concept. And the third one was multiplicity.
Multiplicity. This emphasizes individual differences and how new knowledge, new understanding is generated through interaction.
So it's not just repeating things.
No, it's about creation, becoming. Think about taking a famous poem like that Chinese one, Quiet Night Thought, Genius-y.
Okay.
You could reinterpret it, change some words, add a new perspective. The original is still there, but your act creates something new, a generative repetition.
Got it. So how does this rhizome theory actually look in a classroom? Any practical examples?
Yeah, Wu Jiefen's research gives a great example with a preschool watercolor painting flipped classroom.
Flipped classroom. So online learning first, then practice in class.
Exactly. And that structure is rhizomatic, the online stuff, accessible connection points, the in-class interaction, multiple paths for knowledge exchange.
And the focus is on generating knowledge, not just absorbing techniques.
Precisely. It really supports that diversity and learner autonomy we talked about with nomadic learning.
The learners are like shoots on the rhizome,
Yeah,
popping up anywhere, generating knowledge.
that's a great way to put it. In that watercolor class, students experiment. They combine techniques they learned online or saw from peers. That's the rhizome spirit.
Can you give a specific example from that course?
Sure. So they learn basics online first. Then in class, they practice, share, discuss. After class, they keep interacting online.
Okay.
So one student took web brushing, kind of a modern watercolor thing, and blended it with traditional ink wash painting. Another experimented with marbling techniques for unique backgrounds. These aren't things they were explicitly told to do.
They just explored, made connections.
Exactly. Taking what exists and branching out in new, unforeseen ways. That's rhizomatic.
It sounds like this also links to breaking free from creative roles, traditional boundaries.
Absolutely. Deleuze talks about deterritorializing thinking, creating decentered connections.
Moving beyond old patterns.
Yeah, through practice, but practice aimed at creation, not just copying. He also has this idea of nomad thought.
Nomad thought.
He describes it as fluid, indeterminate, like nomads moving across grasslands, no single fixed route. It's about that in-between space where you reconcile old ways with new ideas.
Can you give another example of that?
Sure. Think about traditional ink wash. You learn it on rice paper, right?
Visually, yeah.
Nomad thought pushes you beyond that. Try it on silk, on fans, walls, clothing. even food or body painting.
Wow, okay. Adapting the skill to totally different contexts.
Yeah, exactly. Adapting it to real situations, like painting a kindergarten wall or making art for your home. Wujifan's research really digs into these practical applications in education.
This is fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pivot slightly. How does generative AI, GenAI, fit into this picture of nomadic learning?
Right, GenAI. So basically, these are AI systems using deep learning, like the transformer models.
To create new content, text, images, audio.
Exactly, by learning patterns from huge amounts of data.
So how does that capability connect with nomadic learning?
Well, GenAI's main functions, making content, personalized recommendations, real-time feedback, interaction.
They seem tailor-made for nomadic learning, right?
Yeah.
Access to resources, guidance, anytime, anywhere.
Precisely. They directly support it.
Can you give some specific examples? How's it being used?
Okay, one big one is creating learning materials. GenAI can generate articles, videos, audio.
But tailored.
Exactly, tailored to your specific needs, your interests, where you are in your understanding right now. So no more one-size-fits-all textbook chapter.
That sounds incredibly useful for making learning truly personal.
It really is. Another key role is as a virtual tutor.
Like providing feedback.
Real-time guidance and feedback, yeah. And it can adjust the learning path, the content, based on how you're doing.
So if I'm stuck on something.
The AI tutor could offer more explanations, different examples, maybe suggest related resources to help you get it.
It's like having a 247 study buddy.
Pretty much. And it can even create personalized learning plans right from the start.
Based on my interests, pace, understanding.
Yep. All those things that are core to nomadic learning. And if you hit a wall, it can instantly provide those extra explanations or point you to other stuff.
That's a really powerful way to cater to individual learning styles.
And it goes further. GenAI can help synthesize knowledge, connect the dots.
Ow.
By analyzing massive data jets, it can give you comprehensive views of complex topics that cut across different fields.
Like climate change, pulling in physics, chemistry, geography, policy.
Exactly, giving you that holistic picture. It also helps with interdisciplinary learning, suggesting projects or resources that blend different areas, like maybe combining traditional art with digital tools.
So it helps break down those silos between subjects.
It really can. And through chat interfaces, it acts like a learning partner.
Alice?
You can talk to it, it helps clarify your thoughts, you can ask it to verify information, get suggestions for where to go next.
Like a virtual mentor.
Or a learning companion, yeah. Providing ongoing support, advice based on your progress, it can even simulate real-world scenarios for practice.
What about language learning? That seems like a perfect fit.
Oh, huge potential there.
Yeah.
Real-time translation, grammar correction.
Breaking down language barriers to access global knowledge.
Absolutely. And generating language learning exercises tailored exactly to your level and style.
So it's not just understanding, but actively learning through interaction.
Exactly. And just generally, it vastly expands the range of resources available by generating all this tailored content.
And it can analyze learning data, too, for feedback.
Yeah, providing personalized feedback to you, and also insights for educators to understand student needs better and offer more targeted help.
This paints a really positive picture. But are there downsides? Challenges?
Oh, definitely. We have to acknowledge the ethical challenges with GenAI.
Like what?
Well, the risk of spreading harmful content or misinformation is real.
Copyright issues, too, I imagine.
Big time. Copyright, legal risks,
Yeah.
and data privacy, potential leaks of sensitive information.
What about bias?
Huge concern. AI models learn from data, and if that data reflects societal biases, the AI can perpetuate or even amplify them. Bias in hiring tools, facial recognition.
And they could be black boxes, right? Hard to know why an AI made a certain decision.
Exactly. That lack of explainability and accountability is a major hurdle.
So using GenAI in learning needs careful thought.
Absolutely. We need strong ethical frameworks, strict governance, a real commitment to transparency and responsibility. Wu Jiafan's research highlights this too, the need for safe, fair learning environments.
Looking ahead, what's the future potential?
Even more intelligent, more personalized experiences. Think VR and AR for truly immersive learning.
Stepping inside a historical event or a biological cell?
Something like that. And maybe integration with other tech, like blockchain for secure records or IoT for real-world data. It's evolving fast.
This is all really exciting. Okay, so for listeners who are thinking, right, I want to try this more nomadic approach. What are some practical steps?
Good question. First step, I'd say, is define your goals and interests.
Why is that so important?
Because nomadic learning is really interest-driven. Knowing what you want to explore, what problem you want to solve, gives you direction, motivation.
Like the students in that watercolor course, setting their own goals, mastering a technique, understanding a style.
Exactly. Have a clear why.
Makes sense. What's next?
Choose diverse resources. Go beyond the usual suspects.
Not just textbooks or formal courses.
Right. Books, sure, but also online resources, podcasts, maybe field studies if it fits, even talking to experts, informational interviews. Broaden your inputs.
You mentioned an anecdote earlier
Oh, yeah.
about crochet.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to make this unique, non-symmetrical shawl, kind of inspired by Native American art.
Did you use a pattern?
Nope. Just experimented with different yarns I found super cheap at a yard sale. Let the materials and intuition guide me. It was all about random connections, breaking the mold.
That's a great example of discovery. What else?
Practice cross-disciplinary integration. Look for ways to connect ideas from different subjects.
Through projects.
Projects are great for this. Or interdisciplinary activities, like if you read about marine conservation.
Maybe volunteer with an environmental group to see the social side.
Exactly. Connect the dots. This also ties into horizontal thinking or lateral thinking.
Not linear thinking.
Right. Creative nonlinear problem solving. Edward de Bono talked about this. Think of Solomon's judgment, finding a solution from a totally unexpected angle.
Generating new ideas by linking unrelated things. Like humor often does.
Precisely. Look for those surprising connections.
So actively seek out those links. What else?
Cultivate autonomous learning. But don't forget group collaboration.
So learn on your own pace, but also connect with others.
Yes. Engage with peers. Exchange ideas. Share what you find. Learn from their perspectives. Form study groups, maybe.
Or even informal knowledge swaps. Like, I teach you data analysis basics, you teach me something else.
Perfect example. That peer learning is incredibly valuable.
Definitely. What comes after that?
Reflection and iteration, super important.
Stepping back and thinking about what you've learned.
Exactly. Regularly reflect. What's working? What's not? Do I need to adjust my direction?
How do you get feedback?
Self-assessment is key. Keep a learning log, maybe self-tests. But also seek external feedback. Mentors, peers, even AI tools can offer feedback now.
That cycle of feedback and adjusting seems critical. And the final step.
Output an application. Use what you've learned.
To solve real problems.
Yeah. Write about it, give a presentation, design something, build a prototype. Putting knowledge into practice really solidifies understanding.
Like the Feynman technique. Explaining it simply to test your grasp.
That's a great method. And don't be afraid to look for adaptable templates or models for complex stuff like academic writing. Gives you a starting point.
And it's okay if the process isn't perfectly linear.
Oh, absolutely not. Be ready to revisit goals, revise your approach based on what you learn, what seems feasible.
What about the tools we use? AI tools, platforms?
Choosing the right ones is key. I've played around with different AI tools, Depsic, Kimi. They're different.
Takes patience,
Mm-hmm.
precise prompts.
Definitely. And build your network. Connect with people on learning platforms, form reading groups, support each other.
And manage your time well.
Crucial. Especially avoid all-nighters. Sleep is when learning consolidates. Short breaks, changing activities, that helps too. Refresh the mind.
You mentioned the watercolor course again.
Yeah.
How did it bring all this together?
It was a great case study.
Yeah.
The flipped model, the online platform, it really nurtured their skills, their self-direction, their innovation.
They learned online, practiced in class, shared online after.
Exactly. Experimenting, building that dynamic community. It was nomadic and rhizomatic learning in action.
It really sounds like the future is this deep integration, this human-AI collaboration.
I think so. GenAI is a tool, but also a learning partner. Real-time feedback, personalized paths.
So the key principles are personalization, adaptation,
Interdisciplinary integration for innovation.
and that human-AI collaboration for continuous improvement.
That seems to be the direction, yeah.
Now let's bring in another important perspective. Paulo Freire and his pedagogy of the oppressed. How does his work fit in?
Freire is hugely influential. Brazilian educator, philosopher, activist. His 1968 book is foundational for critical pedagogy.
Focused on social justice, liberation through education.
Exactly. He looks at that dynamic between the oppressor and the oppressed.
So the oppressed can internalize the oppressor's values. Self-oppression.
Right. And he fiercely critiqued what he called the banking model of education,
Thinking model.
where teachers just deposit knowledge into passive students, like filling empty accounts.
And he argued, this reinforces oppressive structures, stifles critical thinking.
Precisely. It keeps people from questioning the status quo.
So what was his alternative?
Problem-posing education. It's dialogical, collaborative.
Teachers and students learning together.
Yes, by exploring and trying to solve real-world problems relevant to the learners' lives. It encourages critical reflection on social reality and, importantly, action for change.
He also talked about conscientization.
Right, that's the process of becoming critically aware of your situation, social, political, and then taking action to transform it. It's a continuous cycle. Reflection, action, praxis.
And for Freire, the ultimate point of education was
Liberation, human liberation, using critical education, conscientization to break free from oppressive systems, personal and social emancipation.
so education is a tool for social change.
A powerful one. The core ideas are critical thinking, dialogue, collaboration, and that link between reflection and action praxis.
And his work had a massive impact globally, right?
Huge. Translated everywhere, inspired reforms, especially in developing nations. It's still a cornerstone of critical pedagogy, emphasizing social justice.
So how does Freire connect back to nomadic learning? What's the takeaway?
I think it's that emphasis on being critical. In a nomadic environment, you can't just passively accept information.
You need to question it. Question your own learning process.
Exactly. Actively engage, challenge assumptions, dig deeper. Don't just be a recipient, be a critical participant in your own learning and understanding of the world.
That's a really vital point. Okay, as we start to wrap up, let's quickly touch on the different values that humans and AI bring to this whole picture.
Yeah, that's crucial. They aren't the same, and we shouldn't treat them as such.
What's uniquely human here?
Well, creativity, right. Real innovation in tech, art, theory. Emotion, experiencing it, fostering connection, empathy, morality, ethical judgment, striving for harmony.
Autonomy, too.
Yeah,
Making our own choices, choosing our learning paths.
definitely. And our reflective ability, that capacity for self-improvement, critical self-assessment, that's deeply human.
And AI's value. Where does it shine?
Efficiency is a big one. Processing huge amounts of data incredibly fast. Personalization, tailoring things based on user behavior.
It can be innovative, too, generating new content, finding novel solutions.
Yes, in its way. And it provides amazing support, assisting with complex tasks, enhancing what we can do, enabling things that were impossible before.
So it's not about replacement, but synergy.
Exactly. AI's value in learning is really about supporting and augmenting human capabilities. It's a tool, a virtual mentor, maybe,
Improving efficiency, access, outcomes.
while we retain the core human elements, creativity, critical thought, ethics. That's the goal.
Okay, so let's summarize this deep dive. What are the absolute key takeaways on AI-era nomadic learning?
We've seen it's a major shift, right, towards learning that's much more flexible, autonomous, boundaryless.
And AI is a huge enabler here for personalized knowledge acquisition, generation.
Definitely. It breaks down those old constraints of time and place.
And the learner's role changes fundamentally.
Totally. From being a passive receiver to an active creator, a curator of knowledge, driven by your own curiosity, your own needs.
And the benefits. What does this offer us?
Well, potentially much higher learning efficiency, more targeted, relevant, engaging learning. But maybe even more important.
The skills it builds.
Exactly. Cultivating innovative thinking, real problem-solving skills. Essential stuff for navigating the world we live in now.
Okay, so here's the final thought I want to leave you, our listener,
Yeah.
with. How can you actively embrace these ideas, the principles of nomadic learning, that human-AI collaboration?
Yeah, how do you move beyond just consuming information?
Right. How do you start actively shaping your own learning journey, becoming that lifelong learner, that knowledge creator in this rapidly changing AI landscape?
That's the big question to ponder, isn't it?
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the future of learning.